So Google released Google Stitch, the new version of this, a couple of days ago, and there's already a ton of hype up on YouTube about this being the next design tool that's going to make your designs amazing, how you can build websites worth 10 grand in 5 minutes, blah, 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 blah. All the AI bros are out shouting from the treetops. But does it actually marry up to the reality of how this tool works? Well, that's what we're going to take a look at in this video. This isn't a tutorial. This is just me experimenting with this, showing you some of the things I've learned, which helps you get better results and how we can kind of tweak those designs to get maybe closer to what we're looking for. And at the end of it, I'll give you my thoughts and feedback whether I think this is a tool you should add into your tool set or whether it's something you should play about with and ultimately avoid. So let's take a look. So this is the new Stitch interface. So we've got a very simple layout, typical to what you expect to see when it comes to most AI tools. Let's just focus on how we get things working. Now, we could simply go and use one of these basic prompts that says, create a landing page to do X, Y, and Z. Problem with that is you're going to get very generic results and you're not going to have a huge amount of control over it. There are much better ways of working. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell it exactly what we want to do. We're going to use what's called a PRD, which allows us to basically outline the project requirements, tell it how we want it to look, typography, colors, things like that. Gives us a much better starting point. We're also going to use a simple screen capture of a design that we quite like and use that in combination with the PRD to get closer to what we would actually want. How would we go about doing something like that if you've never created anything like this yourself? It's a lot easier than you think. For example, we're going to be using ChatGPT. We're going to use this to create the PRD, but you can use basically any AI tool you want. You can use free accounts on most of these or the paid, doesn't matter what you're using. We're also going to grab a screenshot of the page that I like to use as a starting point example. Now, it's not going to come back with something identical to this, but it is going to give us a better starting point in combination with that PRD. So first things first, let's just scroll through, make sure any animations that are going to show up have already played so I don't grab half-loaded images. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use a little free plugin that just simply goes and allows me to screen capture all of this. So we're going to let that go and capture the screen. After a few moments, we now have a full screen capture of the design we're using as a reference point. So let's just go and copy that, head back over into ChatGPT, paste that in. We're also going to create a simple prompt. So you say, I want to reference the design in the attached image to create a detailed PRD that I can use to prompt Claude Code and Google Stitch, blah, 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 and just tell it exactly what I want. So now we'll tell her to go ahead. That will then take a look and analyze the image and create a PRD that outlines the key things that we want. Obviously, we can tweak this if we want to, which in general you probably would do. As you can see, if we go through, it outlines everything that we wanted to do. So design principles, the layout system, the typography that's going to be used, the color palette, the components, page structure, and so on. So this is basically a guideline that tells it how we want this to work. So once we've got that in place, we can copy it. Going to head over into Stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to paste in what we have there, and we're also going to paste in the image so it's got the reference again. So now we've got everything we need to get started. Let's just generate this and let it start building things out. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to create a design system. That's going to include things like our primary, secondary, tertiary colors and so on, typography, the kind of rounded corners, all those kinds of things that are the starting point for the overall design. And we can tweak that, and we'll take a look at tweaking that as we go through. So the first thing it does is it pulls in the reference image that we've uploaded. And as you can see, we basically have now an infinite canvas where we can just iterate and play around. So let's let that go and generate the starting point for us. It's going to create a couple of different pages, like a home page, maybe a product page, and so on. Let's let it go and do that, and then we'll come back and see what it starts off with. There we go. After a little bit of a wait, we now have the initial design idea brought back to us. Now, it is nowhere near perfect, and this isn't something you sort of one shot and it's all done for you. So before we take a look at the actual design itself, let's take a look at some of the options we've got, the tools and things like that, and also what we've got here, which is basically our design system. So if we zoom into this, you see things are broken down into our primary, secondary, tertiary, and neutral colors. We've got typography for headlines, body, labels, and then we've got a kind of preview of what icons and buttons and things like that would look like. Now, you may think that we don't have a lot of control over this, but we can come over onto the right-hand side, open up a design system, and inside there, you can see we've got two different tabs, the theme and the design MD. Design MD is something that is quite useful and important. We'll come back to that in a moment. Let's take a look, first of all, at the options here. So our seed color, our color theme, and so on. But what we're looking at is our custom color palette. So there's our 4 colors. There's the typography that's being used. There's the corner radius. You can see as we click, it updates in real time, so we can see the changes there. So if you want to change the color scheme here, you absolutely can do. So for example, maybe you didn't want the tertiary color to be this kind of browny beige color, you wanted something different. Well, you can open this up and you can change that color inside here. So maybe you want to introduce a bit more color into this. You can see we can easily do that, make it a bit more bold. Again, all the options inside here that reference that color will update accordingly. And you can see we've also got various different shades and tints here if we hover over. So we can update things inside here, hit save. That will now update our design system. So we can get that then to flow down to the rest of our design based upon the changes we've made. So that's pretty cool, but let's go back to our palette again, our design system, and let's look at the Design MD. Now, if you use a tool like Claude Code, you'll know that MD files are very useful. They're markdown files. And if we open this up, expand this out a little bit, basically what we've got set up inside our style guide is also a design system style guide, whatever you want to call it, is all listed here. So our colors tells it the color palette, the rules. So we can use this, take this over into something Claude Code, and we can use this to ensure that whatever we design, whether it's designing the same as what's here, or just transitioning it over and using this as a kind of starting point, getting the color schemes and everything into place, this will transition that over there. So we can copy that, we can save this out, and we can upload it as a skill for a project or for all of our projects. So this saves a bunch of time and probably one of the most useful features we've got inside here. If you want me to show you how you can do something like that, let me know in the comment section down below. I'll take a look at creating a video, show you how we could use that, take the designs from here, take it over into Claude Code and so on. So that's the basically for our design system. You've got a bunch of other icons here, so things like our select, group select or mark, we can direct, edit, and so on. They're okay, they're a bit glitchy to be honest, they don't always work the way you expect. So let's go now back to our design and take a look at what's going on here. So this is just a little bit on the beige boring side. You can see it's pulled in kind of elements of what we've got here, but it's not exactly where you'd want it to be. So are we stuck with this? No. Let's move this out of the way a second. Let's select this page. And what we've got now is at the top, we can do more things, or we can right click if we want to and do more things from here as well. So if we come up to the top section, you can see generate, we can do prototypes, variations, regenerate, mobile app, and so on. We can modify inside here, so we can edit, annotate, open our design system and update the latest design system. So where we've made changes, you can hit on that. That will then take a look at our design system and update our design based upon any changes we've made there. So typography, colors, those kinds of things. We'll leave that run in the background because it can take quite some time depending upon the number of designs you've got going on. You can see this kind of like ghosts out and I say it's generating it. But let's say we want to create some more variations on this. We kind of don't really like this. We want to get some variations. Well, let's right click here, come down to the option for variants, and we can choose what kind of variations we want. So whether we just change the layout, color scheme, images, text font, text content, or we can go to custom and we can select more options here. So let's say we want to change the layout and the images and the text font, and we want to just kind of refine what we got there, or we can explore other alternatives, or we can totally reimagine, and the number of different options you want. And if you want to add additional custom instructions, you absolutely can do here. So let's try something like, so we've given some instructions, and what we're going to do is we'll say generate variations. That will now go and create 3 different variations for us based upon the layout, the images, the text font, and the sort of suggestions we've given it. As you can see, there's our starting generating screen. So let's let that go and do its thing. That'll take a few moments, maybe more than a few moments, depending upon, well, how fast it is today. So after a few minutes, it has come back with a few variants. We didn't want to kind of go crazy with completely different designs. So you can see it has taken on board what I asked for, the full width featured image of a modern contemporary sort of living room. That's been done nicely. If we look underneath, there's not a huge difference here. They're pretty much exactly the same, to be honest. And then the third one decided it didn't want to work pretty much at all. So we'll delete that from here. So you can see we do kind of get some control over this, but with all these kinds of tools, because you're prompting AI, you are limited to what you can do. Now, I've already created a design using basically exactly the same process that I've just shown you. So this is where we are with that set of designs. And if you zoom out, you can see I've got a bunch more design options here, so different pages and things, but the process is fundamentally the same. You can say also uploaded an image because you can tell it to use specific images like I've done here, so it's actually picked up the image that I wanted. Let's say you've got close to what you kind of think is a decent starting point. What other options do we have, and what can we do with it once we've actually created something and it's close-ish to what we're looking for? Well, let's select this one as an example. Let's come back up. We've got preview as a good example here. We can click on new tab, and we now get a kind of full width preview of what this would look like as if we're viewing it inside a browser. So that's quite cool. You can also see what this looks like on the different devices, so mobile, desktop, and so on. It's okay. You know, there's definitely room for improvement there. Where does the actual usefulness come in? Because you can spend an awful lot of time prompting this and maybe not getting what you want. And it's also very, very slow to work with. Well, I think where the real power of this comes in, once you've got something close to what you're looking for, or at least a decent starting point, you come to the export option. So you select one of the frames that you want from you, come to export, and you see we've got a range of different choices on what we can export to. So AI Studio, Figma, Dual Zip, Code to Clipboard, and so on. So if you want to take this over into something like Claude Code, you could copy the code to clipboard. You could take that over into Claude Code. You could take over your design sort of MD file, and you could combine those two and get it to actually create the design for you. If you want me to cover something like that, let me have a comment down below. If enough of you are interested, I'll absolutely create that video. But let's say we want to open this up in the AI Studio. Now, what are we going to do here? Well, let's just have a look. Build with AI Studio. It's going to take a moment or two to go through, and it'll push this over and recreate it as a HTML file for us. So bringing it over now takes us into this section, which is part of Gemini. As you can see, it's brought in the image, it's brought in our basic HTML document, and it's also brought in our style guide. So all our style guide, our design system, and so on. So the three key elements, and it tells it to build me an app with a screen, blah, 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 blah. Let's just change that. So let's just say build. That's going to take a few moments to go and create everything based upon those three files that it's uploaded. So let's let that run and come back and take a look at what we have then and what we can do with this. After a few moments, this is what we end up with. Now, the thing that really just kind of amazes me whenever you're using anything to do with AI for design is how quickly it will change aspects of that design each time you ask it to do something. So this is kind of one of the key areas where I think when they're saying, as designers, we are kind of coming to the end of our lifespan, shall we say. I just think things like this show that's not going to be the case for quite some time. Apart from anything else, this is okay, but it still requires someone with a designer's eye to actually go in there and start customizing and tweaking this and getting close to what you want. So let's see what we can do here. You'll see this is the preview window. We can view the code, so all our code is inside here. You can publish this, so you could push this straight up to GitHub if you wanted to. Lots of options on where you can take this if you are happy with the end result. But let's just ignore that aspect for now. Let's come into design and see what we can do here. So as you can see, as we scroll up, we've got a nice translucent navigation bar at the top. We haven't had to ask it to do any of that. Sometimes you'll get animations in here, other times you don't. Depends what you get in, I suppose. Well, let's ask it to change some things now. So let's say we don't want this kind of title. So we're going to say, so we'll tell it exactly what we want, which is to update the hero section's main heading text to use a sans serif font, but not Inter, which is what a lot of these AI tools kind of fall back to. So let's action that. After a few moments, you can see we now have a much more modern font going on here. So that's pretty cool. Now, let's say we don't like this image. Well, let's just go and ask it to do something there. So change the hero image and tell it exactly what kind of image we want. Okay, let's scroll up. Not necessarily what I had in mind, but it's AI generate, so what can you do? You can keep on doing this. So you can see as we go through, we've got various different parts. And let's just say, let's focus on this section here. So what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to just take a little screenshot of this, grab that and copy it, paste that in here and just tell it to. So we've got two things to do here. We want to change the spacing on there to make the text bigger and sort of give us plenty of space on the outside. We also want to make sure that the headings are using the same as we've got inside the hero section. So again, let's just tell it to go and do that. Give it a few moments. Generally takes about 30 to 60 seconds, which isn't too bad, I think, when you're asking to make changes to stuff like this. That's pretty good. And if you give it the image like we've done here, it kind of pinpoints exactly what you want. And I'll show you that in kind of a larger scale in a moment, where we ask it to kind of take this bento grid, apply some rounded corners to it, and so on. Okay, after about a minute, you can see now there's our heading. We come down, all our headings now have been updated. Again, same for our little pull quote or testimonial, and the same here. Still plenty of space around it. So let's do one final thing here now. So we're just going to do a screenshot of this, and we're going to say we want to put rounded corners on each of these boxes. So again, copy this and paste it in. Just makes life a little easier when it knows exactly what references. We don't have to sort of tell it in words. So final thing, let's ask it to go and do that. So let's just wait for that to complete. We'll take a final look at what's going on here, and then I'll give you my thoughts on Stitch and whether I think this actually fits into our workflow. So there we go. After about 30 seconds, you can see it's done exactly what I've asked it to do. And the nice thing with this is updating the CSS that's actually applied to this particular design, so we can have access to all of that information. We can copy the code from inside here. You can see there's the entire site structure. We can push this to GitHub. We've got a lot of different options. I think as a design tool, this is okay. It's a much, much better setup than it was originally when I took a look at this about 18 months ago, where the results were incredibly poor. This is getting much better. And I think with a little bit of time and effort into refining this, it would be a good-ish starting point. Do I see it replacing my workflow? Absolutely not, because I think the time it takes to create a starting point, then reiterate, the amount of time it takes to sort of just keep prompting it to get it where you want. I could just use something like Reloom and get me exactly the same point, probably quicker, with a lot more flexibility, and you still end up with probably what I would consider probably be a better end result. But maybe that's becoming from a designer's point of view. What I do like about this, though, is that we can, once you've got this design set up and you're kind of close to where you want, you can push this over into Gemini like we've just seen. And inside here, it's faster to iterate. It's faster to make those changes. You've seen about 30 seconds to make a change. You try to do the same thing inside Stitch, you could be waiting a couple of minutes, depending upon how busy it is. So I think this is a better way. But obviously now we've lost that kind of flexibility of being able to export this as a Figma file and so on. So it is sort of swings and roundabouts how you want to kind of approach this. I do think what they're doing here is good, though. I think in maybe the next iteration or a bit of time, the next, say, 6 months, where things kind of push forward, if they keep developing it this way, I think it could be a better tool. I'll come back and revisit it. But there are definitely use cases for this. I just don't see it replacing even an entry-level designer at this point in time. But what are your thoughts? Have you tried Google Stitch yourself? Is this the first time you've seen it? Or is this something you just think, not for me, not interested, Paul? Drop a comment down below, let me know your thoughts. And if you tested it, let me know what you found from it. If you found any good results or you thought it just sucked, again, drop a comment. As always, all applicable links to this and everything covered in the video are in the description down below. My name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.